Commander Jake Murphy stared at his coffee mug, wondering if the brown liquid inside could technically be classified as a war crime under 17 different galactic conventions. The stuff that passed for coffee on Harmony 7 tasted like someone had dissolved old boots in battery acid, but it was caffeinated. And that was all that mattered during the 14-hour shifts of cataloguing empty space. Commander Murphy, chittered Vex, the station's chief engineer, his 6 arms frantically adjusting controls while his compound eyes darted between 12 different displays. The quantum resonance scanner is detecting anomalous readings in Sector 7777 Alpha. Should I be concerned? I feel like I should be concerned. I'm always concerned. But this feels like extra concern. Jake took another sip of his liquid regret and glanced at the readout. Looks like space dust. Vex X. Maybe some old asteroid debris. You know what space is mostly full of, right? Empty. Vex's antennae twitched nervously. Nothing. Lots and lots of nothing. That's why they call it space. Captain Zorlak's booming voice echoed across the bridge as the 7-foot-tall reptilian strode in, his ceremonial armor clanking with each step. Murphy, have you completed the analysis of the Kepler 442 system? Yep, empty. Shocking, I know. Your lack of proper military decorum continues to astound me. Zorlak huffed, his scales shifting to an annoyed shade of purple. In the Zorlan Imperial Navy, we maintain proper respect for chain of command. Good thing we're not in the Zorlan Imperial Navy then, Jake replied, not looking up from his tablet. We're on a research station cataloging rocks and empty space. The most exciting thing that's happened in 3 months was when Dr. Krim discovered that new species of space fungus. Dr. Krim looked up from her workstation, her blue-gray skin brightening slightly. The fungus exhibits fascinating properties. It appears to feed on cosmic radiation and reproduce through quantum tunneling. Most illogical, yet empirically verified. See? Exciting stuff, Jake said dryly. Really gets the blood pumping. The humans had been part of the galactic community for exactly 43 years, and in that time, they'd earned a reputation as the galaxy's oddball species. While other races specialized in trade, science, or military conquest, humans seemed to specialize in showing up places and making everything weird. They were friendly enough, but there was something unsettling about how they approached problems that sent every other species running for the hills. I still don't understand human psychology, Vex muttered, his mandibles clicking anxiously. Your species volunteers for the most dangerous assignments, laughs at threats, and treats warfare like a recreational activity. It's deeply disturbing. We're not that weird, Jake protested mildly. Last week you watched a documentary about your world wars and described the Battle of Stalingrad as pretty standard Tuesday afternoon stuff, Dr. Krim pointed out. This suggests either severe psychological trauma or a fundamental disconnect from reality. Or maybe we just have perspective, Jake shrugged. You guys worry too much about everything. Life's too short to spend it being scared of stuff that probably won't happen. The irony of this statement became apparent approximately 30 seconds later when Vex's console erupted in a symphony of alerts, warnings, and what sounded suspiciously like the digital equivalent of screaming. Commander Murphy. Vex's voice cracked as his 6 arms flew across the controls. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet approaching our position. Unknown configuration. But the energy signatures are off the charts. We're talking about at least 300 vessels. Possibly more. Captain Zorlak's scales immediately shifted to a pale yellow, the Zorlan equivalent of going white with fear. 300 ships? Out here? There's nothing of strategic value in this sector. Why would anyone bring a fleet this size to the middle of nowhere? Jake finally looked up from his tablet, mildly interested for the first time all day. Huh. That's new. Vex X, how long until they reach us? At their current speed, approximately 18 minutes, Vex X replied, his voice climbing toward full panic. Commander, their weapon signatures are unlike anything in our databases. These aren't exploration vessels or merchant ships. This is a war fleet. Well, Jake said, finishing his coffee and grimacing at the taste, I guess Tuesday just got interesting. The Dread Fleet had earned its name through 3 sectors of systematic conquest, leaving behind a trail of subjugated worlds and scattered resistance movements. Admiral Vorthak commanded from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Darkness, a vessel that looked like someone had crossed a cathedral with a meat grinder and painted the result flat black. Another pathetic research station, Vorthak growled, his 4 eyes examining the tactical display. Animal defenses, skeleton crew, probably scientists and bureaucrats. This will be over in minutes. Be sick tune. Dios. The Dread Fleet had a simple philosophy: show up, demand surrender, accept submission, or deliver annihilation. In 3 years of conquest, they'd encountered exactly 0 resistance worth mentioning. Every species in the galaxy had learned the same lesson. When the Dread Fleet arrived, you ran, hid, or died, usually in that order. Aboard Harmony 7, panic had set in with remarkable efficiency. "We need to evacuate immediately," Captain Zorlak announced, his scales now a brilliant shade of terror yellow. "The escape pods can reach the nearest inhabited system in 6 days. If we leave now, we might survive this." "Agreed," Dr. Krim said, her logical mind calculating survival probabilities. "Resistance is mathematically impossible. A research station cannot defeat a military fleet of this magnitude." Vex was already pulling up evacuation protocols, his 6 arms working frantically. "The escape pods are ready, but we'll need to abandon all research data. Years of work, just gone." Jake looked around at his colleagues with what could generously be described as mild confusion. "Hold up. Has anyone tried asking them what they want?" The bridge fell silent, except for the humming of life support systems and Vex's nervous chittering. "Asking them what they want," Zorlak repeated slowly, as if Jake had just suggested they paint themselves purple and do interpretive dance. "Yeah, you know, communication. Talking, that thing we do with our mouthparts to exchange information." "Commander Murphy," Dr. Krim said carefully, "these are the Dread Fleet. They have conquered 17 star systems in the past 3 years. Their methodology is well documented: arrive, demand surrender, destroy resistance. They don't negotiate." "According to who?" "According to every intelligence report, survivor testimony, and military analysis in the Galactic database," she replied. "Okay, but has anyone actually tried talking to them? Like person to person, ship to ship, species to species?" "I say, son." The 3 aliens exchanged glances that managed to convey 17 different levels of disbelief. "Murphy," Zorlak said slowly, "you don't negotiate with the Dread Fleet. You run. That's what every sane species does. That's what we're going to do right now." The communications array crackled to life, and Admiral Vorthak's voice filled the bridge with all the warmth and charm of a funeral dirge played on broken glass. "Ascension insignificant research vessel. This is Admiral Vorthak of the Dread Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate and painful destruction. You have 30 seconds to comply." Vex's antennae were now vibrating at frequencies that suggested either extreme terror or an impending molt. "See? Surrender or die. No negotiation. Can we please evacuate now?" Jake stood up and walked over to the communications console. "Mind if I take this one?" "Murphy, no," Zorlak hissed. "Don't antagonize them. If we surrender quickly and quietly, they might let us live." "Relax, Captain. I'm just going to have a friendly conversation." Jake activated the comm system and leaned back in his chair with the casual posture of someone about to order a sandwich rather than face down a fleet of conquest-happy aliens. "Hey there, Admiral Vorthak. This is Commander Jake Murphy of the research station Harmony 7. Thanks for dropping by our little corner of nowhere. Quick question, though. What exactly are you planning to do with a research station that's cataloging empty space? I mean, we've got some really exciting data on cosmic dust patterns and a few samples of space fungus, but I'm not sure that's worth deploying 300 warships." The comm channel went quiet for several long seconds. Did he just ask them to explain their invasion strategy?" Vex whispered. "I think he did." Dr. Kryn replied, her scientific mind struggling to process this unprecedented approach to first contact with a hostile force. Admiral Vorthak's voice returned, noticeably less confident than before. Human, you will surrender immediately or face destruction. Right. Got that part, Jake replied cheerfully, but I'm still curious about the whole strategy here. You guys have been conquering systems for 3 years, which is impressive, don't get me wrong. But what's the endgame? Are you planning to colonize these places, strip mine them, turn them into military bases? Because if it's colonization, I've got to tell you, this particular system is pretty much worthless. No habitable planets, no rare minerals, no strategic value whatsoever. Honestly, we're only here because someone has to catalog all the nothing, and apparently that someone is us. The silence that followed was so profound that Vexx began to wonder if the communications array had malfunctioned. He's actually confused them, Dr. Kryn observed with scientific fascination. The Admiral doesn't know how to respond to a casual conversation about military strategy. Captain Vorthak's scales had shifted through several colors and were now settling on a pattern that roughly translated to existential crisis. Murphy, he whispered urgently, what are you doing? Having a conversation, Jake replied, then keyed the comm again. Admiral? You still there? Look, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but before we start any surrendering or destroying, maybe we could figure out what you actually want. Because if it's just the research station, I've got to be honest with you. It's not worth much. We're basically galactic accountants with really expensive equipment. Admiral Vorthak stared at his communications officer, all 4 of his eyes blinking in sequence, which in his species indicated either deep thought or a complete mental breakdown. Is this human? Is he mocking us? Vorthak asked. I don't believe so, Admiral, replied his tactical officer. Analysis of his vocal patterns suggests genuine curiosity rather than sarcasm or defiance. Genuine curiosity? About our conquest strategies during a surrender demand. It would appear so, sir. Meanwhile, back on Harmony 7, Jake was settling into what his crewmates were beginning to recognize as his problem-solving mode, which historically had resulted in either brilliant solutions or catastrophic disasters with no middle ground whatsoever. Okay, Admiral, I'm going to level with you here, Jake continued, his tone suggesting he was explaining basic physics to a particularly slow child. Your reputation precedes you, and it's pretty impressive. 3 sectors, 17 systems, very thorough work. But here's the thing I'm not understanding. What's your endgame with our little research station? We've got maybe 30 people on board. Our biggest weapon is a mining laser we use to take core samples from asteroids, and our most valuable asset is probably the half-decent coffee machine in the cafeteria. Vex's 6 arms had stopped moving entirely, frozen in a tableau of existential terror. But is he critiquing their invasion strategy? I believe he's conducting a cost-benefit analysis of our destruction, Dr. Kryn replied, her scientific mind struggling to categorize this unprecedented approach to hostage negotiations. The comm crackled again as Admiral Vorthak's voice returned, noticeably less booming than before. Human Murphy, your station will be destroyed as an example to others who might consider resistance. An example to who? Jake asked reasonably. We're literally in the middle of nowhere. The nearest inhabited system is 6 days away at maximum warp. The only people who are going to see your example are space truckers and the occasional survey team. And let me tell you, space truckers are not easily impressed. Last week one of them told me about hauling cargo through a solar flare because he was behind schedule. These are not people who scare easily. Captain Vorthak's scales had now cycled through every color in the Zorlan emotional spectrum and were starting to invent new ones. Murphy, he hissed quietly. What are you doing? Negotiating, Jake replied, covering the comm pickup. This isn't negotiating. This is effective communication. Suicidal. Jake uncovered the comm and continued his cheerfully reasonable conversation with the increasingly bewildered Admiral. Look, Vorthak, can I call you Vorthak? Here's what I'm thinking. You've got 300 ships out there. which represents a massive logistical investment. Fuel, crew wages, ammunition, maintenance costs. Destroying one research station with 30 people on it is like using a sledgehammer to swat a fly. It's technically effective, but it's not really cost-efficient. Cost-efficient? Admiral Vorthak's voice cracked slightly. Right. Now, if you want to make a statement, that's different. But you'd want to make it somewhere people would actually notice. Might I suggest the Proxima Trade Hub? It's got about 50 million inhabitants, major shipping lanes, excellent communications infrastructure, perfect for spreading the word about your conquest capabilities, and much better return on investment for your intimidation campaign. Dr. Krim's blue-grey skin had gone completely pale. He's giving them strategic advice. He's optimizing their invasion plan. VexX added, his voice climbing toward frequencies only bats could hear. This is insane, Captain Vorthak muttered. Even for humans, this is insane. The con channel stayed silent for nearly a full minute before Admiral Vorthak's voice returned, now carrying a note of what could only be described as confusion mixed with grudging respect. Human Murphy, are you suggesting we bypass your station and attack a more strategically valuable target? I'm suggesting you think about your goals, Jake replied calmly. If your goal is maximum intimidation with optimal resource allocation, then yeah, hitting a major population center makes more sense. If your goal is just to blow stuff up because it's Tuesday and you're bored, then by all means, waste your ammunition on us. But that seems like poor planning for a fleet commander of your caliber. VexX made a sound that was somewhere between a whimper and the noise a deflating balloon makes. He complimented him. Dr. Krim observed with scientific detachment. He's praising the Admiral's strategic capabilities while suggesting alternative targets. This is either brilliant psychological manipulation or the most elaborate suicide attempt in recorded history. Murphy, Captain Vorthak whispered urgently. They're going to kill us all. Maybe, Jake shrugged. But they were going to do that anyway. At least now we're having an interesting conversation about it. Admiral Vorthak's voice returned, now carrying a note of genuine uncertainty. Commander Murphy, in 3 years of conquest, no one has ever suggested we reconsider our target selection. Really? That's weird. I mean, military strategy is all about efficiency, right? Maximum impact with minimum resource expenditure. Basic stuff. Basic stuff, the Admiral repeated slowly. Right. Look, Vorthak, I'm going to make you an offer, instead of wasting time and ammunition on our little research station. Why don't you tell me what you're really trying to accomplish here? Maybe we can brainstorm some alternatives that would be more effective for your overall strategic objectives. The silence that followed was so complete that the crew of Harmony 7 could hear their own heartbeats. Did he just, Vex began, offer to help plan their conquests? Dr. Krim finished. Yes, he did. I need to lie down, Captain Vorthak announced. You're standing up, Jake pointed out. I need to lie down in a bunker. On a different planet, in another galaxy. Admiral Vorthak was experiencing what his species called cognitive displacement, a condition that occurred when reality stubbornly refused to conform to expectations. In 3 years of conquest, every encounter had followed the same script: arrive, demand surrender, accept submission, or deliver destruction. It was simple, efficient, and had never failed. Until now. Commander Murphy, the Admiral said slowly, you are either the bravest being I have ever encountered, or the most deranged. Probably a little of both, Jake replied cheerfully. Occupational hazard of being human. So, about those strategic objectives. Dim, you want to know our strategic objectives? Sure, I mean, conquest for the sake of conquest is fine, but it's not very sustainable long term. Eventually you run out of stuff to conquer, or you overextend your supply lines, or you meet someone who conquers back. A basic military history. This was the moment Admiral Vorthak made his first critical error. Instead of simply destroying the research station and moving on, he decided to teach this presumptuous human a lesson about the reality of galactic power. Very well, human. Since you seem so interested in strategy, let me explain something to you. We are going to destroy the mining colony in the Kepler 438 system. 50,000 civilians who will die screaming because you thought you could negotiate with the dread fleet. Jake's easygoing demeanor shifted almost imperceptibly. His voice remained calm, but something in his tone made every alien on the bridge suddenly pay very close attention. Excuse me? The Kepler 438 colony, 50,000 miners and their families. They will die because you wasted my time with your pathetic attempts at diplomacy. Admiral Vorthak, Jake said, his voice now carrying the kind of quiet intensity that made veteran soldiers nervous. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're planning to murder 50,000 civilians to prove a point to me? To prove a point to the galaxy, Vorthak corrected. Your species will learn, as all species learn, that resistance to the dread fleet is futile. Jake stood up slowly, and for the first time since the conversation began, his three alien crewmates saw something in his expression that made them remember why humans had a reputation for being dangerous. You know what, Admiral? I think it's time for a history lesson. Bexex, could you patch me through to Earth Command? I think they need to hear about this. Earth Command. Vex's voice cracked. Commander, are you declaring war on the dread fleet? Not declaring it, Jake replied, his fingers dancing over the communications console. Just mentioning that we've got a pest control situation out here. Dr. Krim's scientific mind immediately latched onto the terminology. Pest control? Yeah, see, the thing about humans is that we've been dealing with bullies for about 10,000 years of recorded history. Guys who think they can intimidate people into submission, who target civilians to make points, who believe that might makes right. We've got a lot of experience with that particular problem. Jake's comm request went through to Earth Command with the kind of efficiency that suggested this wasn't the first time such a call had been made. Earth Command. This is Commander Murphy on Harmony 7. We've got a code orange situation out here. The response came back immediately in a crisp, professional voice. A copy that, Commander Murphy. Nature of the code orange. Self-styled conquest fleet, calling themselves the Dread Fleet. Approximately 300 vessels, unknown tech level, standard intimidation tactics. They're threatening to massacre civilians at Kepler 438 to prove a point. Understood. Admiral Chen is en route with Task Force 7. ETA 16 minutes. Are you in immediate danger? Not really. They're still in the talking phase. I think they're new to this. Admiral Vorthak's voice cut through the con channel, now carrying a note of genuine alarm. Human Murphy, what are you doing? Oh, hey, Admiral. Just calling in the professionals. See, the thing is, humans handle galactic security for this sector. It's not really official, but we've got a sort of informal arrangement with the galactic community. When someone shows up threatening to commit genocide, we handle it. Handle it? Vorthak's voice climbed several octaves. Yeah, think of us as exterminators. You know, pest control specialists. We show up, we solve the problem, we clean up the mess, and then everyone goes back to their normal lives. Captain Zorlak's scales had transcended the normal color spectrum and were now displaying patterns that suggested his sanity was hanging by a thread. Murphy, you just called for military intervention against a fleet of 300 ships. Task Force 7 is overkill for this, Jake admitted. But Admiral Chen likes to be thorough. How many ships does Task Force 7 have? Dr. Krim asked with scientific curiosity. 12. 12 ships against 300? Vex's voice reached frequencies that were probably causing pain to local wildlife. Trust me, it's plenty. Humans are really good at this particular job. We've had a lot of practice. Jake turned back to the con. Admiral Vorthak, I'm going to give you one chance to reconsider your career choices. You can take your fleet and leave this sector, never to return, and we'll call this a learning experience. Or you can proceed with your plan to murder civilians, and we'll demonstrate why humans don't run from fights. You think 12 human ships can defeat the Dread Fleet? Admiral, Jake said with the patience of someone explaining basic arithmetic to a child. Let me tell you about human military history. We're a species that turned warfare into an art form. We've fought wars on every continent of our planet, in every environment you can imagine, with weapons ranging from sharp sticks to planet killers. We've fought wars for territory, resources, ideology, religion, and sometimes just because it was Thursday and we were bored. The galaxy is peaceful now because humans handle the security. We're very good at it. The comm channel went silent. We don't run, Admiral, because we've never needed to. When you've conquered your own planet 17 times before you figure out interstellar travel, everything else starts to look like a minor disagreement. Task Force 7 dropped out of hyperspace with the kind of precision that suggested they'd done this before. 12 ships, sleek and efficient, arranged in a formation that looked almost casual but was actually a textbook example of interlocking fields of fire. Admiral Chen's voice came through the con with the professional tone of someone conducting a routine inspection rather than facing down a fleet of 300 hostile vessels. Commander Murphy, this is Admiral Chen. Sorry for the delay. We were handling a situation in the Vega system. The pirates trying to blockade shipping lanes took longer than expected to clean up. No problem, Admiral. The Dread fleet is still here, still planning to commit genocide, standard intimidation tactics. Nothing creative. I copy that. Admiral Vorthak, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You're going to stand down immediately and withdraw from this sector. Admiral Vorthak's response carried all the bluster of someone who still believed in his own reputation. Human Admiral, you face the Dread fleet, 300 ships of conquest. Your 12 vessels are insignificant against our might. 300 ships. Admiral Chen mused. That's actually pretty impressive. Most of the fleets we deal with are smaller. What do you think, Murphy? Standard dispersal pattern or something more creative? Jake consulted his tactical display with the casual interest of someone reviewing a restaurant menu. They're using a classic intimidation formation. Lots of impressive-looking ships spread out to maximize visual impact. Not much tactical coherence, though. I'd say standard dispersal pattern should do it. Agreed. All right, people, you heard the man. Standard dispersal. Let's make this educational. What happened next lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, though the survivors would remember it for the rest of their lives. The human ships moved with choreographed precision, their formation shifting from casual arrangement to deadly efficiency in seconds. Each vessel found its optimal firing position while maintaining perfect coordination with the rest of the task force. The Dread fleet's response was exactly what Jake had expected: confusion, panic, and a complete breakdown of command structure as 300 ship captains tried to figure out why 12 human vessels were casually dismantling their supposedly invincible armada. Target priority is command and control, Admiral Chen announced calmly. We want to minimize casualties while demonstrating superior tactical capability. Standard rules of engagement. Jake provided running commentary for his alien crewmates, who were watching the battle unfold with expressions of fascinated horror. See, the thing about human military doctrine is that we don't just want to win fights, we want to win them so decisively that nobody wants to fight us again. It's more efficient than having to keep proving the same point over and over. The first wave of human attacks targeted the Dread fleet's command ships with surgical precision. Advanced targeting systems, honed through centuries of warfare, identified critical systems and disabled them without destroying the vessels entirely. Notice how they're not just blowing stuff up, Jake continued. They're systematically dismantling the fleet's ability to coordinate and communicate. Cut off the head, and the body can't function. Admiral Vorthak's voice cut through the tactical chatter, now carrying the high pitch of genuine panic. Impossible. Our shields are holding. Our weapons are superior. Admiral, Jake replied patiently, your shields are holding because the humans are letting them hold. They're using minimum force necessary to achieve their objectives. If they wanted your ships destroyed, they'd be debris by now. As if to emphasize the point, one of the human vessels casually vaporized a Dread fleet cruiser that had been attempting to target civilian shipping in a nearby system. The destruction was so swift and complete that the other Dread Fleet ships barely had time to register what had happened. That one was targeting non-combatants. Admiral Chen's voice explained calmly. We don't allow that. The pattern continued for the next 3 minutes. Systematic dismantling of the Dread Fleet's command structure, destruction of any ship that threatened civilians, and the gradual realization among the surviving crew that they were facing an enemy that operated on a completely different level of military capability. The beautiful thing about human tactics, Jake continued his commentary, is that they're designed to minimize casualties while maximizing psychological impact. Most of those Dread Fleet ships are going to survive this encounter, but their crews are going to spend the rest of their lives telling stories about the day they met the human military. Captain Vorthak finally found his voice. Murphy, how is this possible? 12 ships defeating 300. Technology, tactics, and experience, Jake replied. Humans have been perfecting the art of warfare for millennia. When you're really good at something, numbers become less important than skill. Admiral Vorthak's final transmission came through as his flagship limped away from the battlefield, its engines barely functional and its weapon systems completely offline. Human Admiral Chen. Vorthak's voice was barely above a whisper. We surrender. We withdraw from this sector. We will not return. Apology accepted. Admiral, Chen replied with professional courtesy. Safe travels. The remaining ships of the Dread Fleet scattered in every direction, their crews eager to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the human task force. Clean up on Aisle 7, Admiral Chen announced cheerfully. Task Force 7 to all vessels, police the area for debris and survivors. Standard post-engagement protocols. Commander Murphy, pleasure working with you again. Likewise, Admiral. Thanks for the quick response. Any time. That's what we're here for. And just like that, it was over. The Dread Fleet was gone. The civilian colony was safe, and Task Force 7 was already preparing to jump to their next assignment. Well, Jake said, settling back into his chair, that was exciting. The next morning aboard Harmony 7 began exactly the same way as every other morning, with Jake staring at his coffee mug and wondering if it violated the laws of physics. The only difference was that his 3 alien crewmates were staring at him with expressions that ranged from newfound respect to existential terror. So, Vexex began carefully, his 6 arms fidgeting with various controls. Yesterday we were almost destroyed by a conquering armada, and you handled it by having a casual conversation with their admiral and then calling in 12 ships to defeat 300. That's a pretty accurate summary, Jake agreed, taking a sip of his coffee and immediately regretting it. And this is normal for humans. Let's define normal. Dr. Krim consulted her datapad, her scientific mind struggling to process the previous day's events. According to my research, Task Force 7 has responded to 47 similar incidents in the past 2 years. Conquest fleets, pirate armadas, territorial disputes that threatened civilian populations. And in every case, human forces resolved the situation with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency. Sounds about right. Jake nodded. Humans handle security for this part of the galaxy. It's not really official, but everyone sort of understands the arrangement. Captain Vorthak's scales had settled into a pattern that indicated deep philosophical confusion. Murphy, why didn't you mention that humans were responsible for galactic security? You never asked. We never asked if humans were the galaxy's unofficial military force. Come on, Vorthak. How do you think the galaxy stays peaceful? You've got hundreds of species, millions of worlds, countless opportunities for conflict, and yet major wars are practically non-existent. Did you think that just happened by accident? The 3 aliens exchanged glances that conveyed several layers of realization. The Trade Protection Services, Dr. Krim said slowly. Human ships patrol the major shipping lanes. The peacekeeping missions, Vexex added. When there are territorial disputes, human mediators somehow always manage to find solutions. The anti-piracy operations, Captain Vorthak concluded. Every time pirates try to establish themselves in a system, they mysteriously disappear. Right, Jake said. Pest control. We're really good at it. Vex's antennae were twitching with nervous energy. But why? Why do humans take responsibility for galactic security? What do you get out of it? Jake considered the question while attempting another sip of his coffee. Peace and quiet, mostly. See, the thing about humans is that we learned a long time ago that it's easier to prevent problems than to fix them after they happen. If we let every 2-bit dictator and wannabe conqueror run around unchecked, eventually they become our problem anyway. But this way, we handle things early, efficiently, and with minimal fuss. Minimal fuss? Captain Zorlak's voice cracked. You just destroyed an entire conquest fleet. We disabled a conquest fleet, Jake corrected. Most of those ships and crews survived. They'll go back to their home systems, tell everyone about their encounter with human military forces, and hopefully find more productive ways to spend their time. It's educational. Dr. Krim was frantically taking notes. From a sociological perspective, this represents a fascinating approach to interspecies relations. Humans have essentially appointed themselves as the galaxy's immune system, responding to threats with overwhelming force while minimizing actual destruction. That's actually a pretty good analogy, Jake agreed. We're like white blood cells. Most of the time you don't notice us, but when something dangerous shows up, we deal with it. But why doesn't anyone know about this? Vex asked. Why isn't it common knowledge that humans handle galactic security? Jake shrugged. Because it works better when people don't think about it too much. If everyone knew that humans were actively maintaining galactic peace, some species might get resentful about it, or try to challenge us, or start depending on us for everything. This way, people just go about their lives, trade flows freely, conflicts get resolved before they escalate, and everyone assumes it's just natural galactic stability. Natural galactic stability, Captain Zorlak repeated slowly, maintained by humans with overwhelming military superiority. Pretty much. There. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the gentle click of Vex's nervous fidgeting. Murphy, Dr. Krim said finally, what would happen if humans decided to stop providing security services? Jake considered this while staring out at the stars. Probably chaos within a few years. Trade wars, territorial conflicts, resource disputes, the return of large-scale piracy. Some species would try to fill the power vacuum, which would lead to arms races and eventually to the kind of galactic wars that would make the old Earth conflicts look like playground disagreements. So the galaxy depends on humans for stability. The galaxy depends on humans for pest control, Jake corrected. We just happen to be very good at it. Vex made a sound that was somewhere between admiration and terror. And humans are okay with this responsibility? It beats the alternative. Besides, we're good at it. And it keeps things interesting, better than cataloging empty space for the rest of eternity. Jake finished his coffee, grimaced at the taste, and turned back to his tablet. Speaking of which, we've got 17 systems to survey this week, and Admiral Chen's people made a mess of local space traffic with all their maneuvering yesterday. We should probably get back to work. Back to work, Captain Zorlak repeated, cataloging cosmic dust and asteroid fields. Yet, then, while humans casually maintain peace across hundreds of star systems. That too. And this is just Tuesday for you. Jake looked up from his tablet with the kind of mild confusion that suggested he genuinely didn't understand what all the fuss was about. Pretty much. Why? What do Tuesdays usually involve for other species? Dr. Krim consulted her data pad again. Well, for Zephyrians like myself, Tuesdays typically involve advanced theoretical research, peer review sessions, and approximately 2.7 hours of contemplating the fundamental nature of existence. Sounds relaxing, Jake said. Vex? The insectoid engineer's antennae drooped slightly. Maintenance schedules, efficiency optimization, and worrying about whether our ship's systems will catastrophically fail in the next 24 hours. That's very practical. Zorlak. The reptilian captain's scales had shifted to a pattern that Jake had learned indicated embarrassment. Trading negotiations, route planning, and, well, mostly trying to avoid anything that might be remotely dangerous or exciting. Ah, Jake nodded as if this explained everything. See, that's the difference. Human Tuesdays involve all the regular stuff: work, maintenance, route planning, plus the occasional need to prevent galactic warfare. It's really not that complicated.
Not that complicated, Captain Zorlak said weakly. Right, now, about those 17 systems. The first one is supposed to have some interesting mineral formations, and there's been some chatter about unusual energy readings in the asteroid belt. Should be a nice, quiet day. As if summoned by his words, the communications array began chiming with an incoming priority message.
Jake sighed and tapped the accept button. A holographic display materialized, showing a harried-looking human officer in naval uniform. Murphy, this is Commander Rodriguez from the patrol cruiser Determination. We've got a situation developing in the Kepler 442 system. 3 different species are claiming mining rights to the same asteroid field, and they're starting to bring in armed escorts. Can you swing by and help sort this out? How armed are we talking? Jake asked, already pulling up star charts. Nothing major. A few frigates, some converted merchant vessels with defensive modifications, standard territorial posturing. Time frame? They're supposed to start negotiations in about 6 hours, which, based on intercepted communications, appears to involve seeing who can bring the most firepower. Jake glanced at his crewmates, who were staring at him with expressions of dawning realization.
We'll be there in 4 hours, he said. Tell them we're coming to mediate and that anyone who starts shooting before we arrive will have to explain themselves to Admiral Chen personally.
I copy that. Thanks, Murphy. Rodriguez out. The hologram flickered off, leaving the bridge in silence. So, Jake said, turning back to his tablet, slight change of plans. We'll hit the mineral survey systems tomorrow. Today we're doing conflict resolution. The conflict resolution, Dr. Krim repeated, her scientific composure finally cracking. You're going to prevent 3 different species from starting a war over mining rights. It's probably not going to be a war, more like a really expensive shouting match with weapons involved. But yeah, we'll sort it out. How? VexX asked, his voice pitched higher than usual. Jake shrugged. Same way we always do. Show up, be reasonable. Point out that armed conflict over asteroid mining is economically inefficient and potentially lethal, and suggest a compromise that everyone can live with. And if they don't want to compromise? Then we explain the downsides of not compromising. Usually works. Captain Zorlak made a sound that might have been a whimper. This is a typical Tuesday for humans. Well, it's Tuesday for me, Jake corrected. Other humans are probably doing other Tuesday things. Dr. Sarah Kim is probably running xenobiological studies on some fascinating new microorganism. Lieutenant Torres is likely mediating a trade dispute between cargo haulers. Commander Singh is probably investigating reports of suspicious ships near the outer colonies. You know, regular Tuesday stuff. Regular Tuesday stuff that maintains the peace and stability of an entire galaxy, Dr. Krim said faintly. Right. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to review the mining regulations for disputed asteroid fields and figure out the best approach for dealing with 3-way territorial disputes. Should we get underway for Kepler 442? Captain Zorlak stared at him for a long moment, then slowly began entering the navigation coordinates. Course laid in, Murphy. Great. Oh, and VexX? You might want to run a diagnostic on our communication array. If this turns into a bigger mess, we might need to call for backup. How much backup? VexX asked nervously.
Probably just a light cruiser or 2. Like I said, it's just Tuesday.
As Harmony 7 changed course toward what was potentially the 48th interstellar crisis that Jake Murphy would resolve with casual competence, his 3 alien crewmates sat in stunned silence, trying to process the fact that they were living through what humans considered a perfectly ordinary day. Outside the viewports, the stars wheeled slowly past, beautiful and serene and blissfully unaware that their peaceful coexistence depended on beings who considered preventing galactic warfare to be routine maintenance. Just another Tuesday in human space,